Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our panel debate with Ed Thomas, Jayne Rotheroe, and Steve Hayes. I'm not going to do much of an introduction because I know they're going to introduce themselves. So keep using the emojis, keep posting in the chat, and put any questions in the Q&A tab for the panel. They'll be picked up later. So going to hand over to Ed, and they're going to kick off with, what can a housing comms pro teach me?
Thanks a lot, Lee, for introducing, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in and being interested in what a housing comms pro might be able to teach you. It's obviously we're in a late afternoon session when you kind of sat in person at an all-day conference. This is the session that maybe you might be feeling like you need a little bit of energy. And that's what I hope, even if you don't learn anything, hopefully you'll leave with a bit of a smile on your face at the end of this session. There are some more commsHERO sessions after this, and of course we're kind of the warm-up act for the warm-up act for the warm-up act for the after party. So I'm taking quite a lot of kudos from that. So thanks a lot for scheduling us right now. But we want to bring some energy and hopefully a few smiles. And if you learn something as well, so much the better. So what we're doing is the three of us are going to share some different subject matter, but I think what will resonate with all of them is issues from the housing sector that we've really been looking at. Yes, over the last 18 months, but actually they probably existed before that. We're going to be looking at employee engagement, how to just take some slightly dull or mundane content and turn it into all singing, all dancing content, and then also having a little look at hard to reach audiences as well. And I think this is great for the sector. So hopefully there's lots of housing people on here, a few emojis from you guys, that would be brilliant. But also for kind of anyone in any comms role, I think there's a lot to be hopefully other people will take away from this as well. So what we're going to do, what I'll do is before we get into this and start sharing screens, there was a minor technical hitch just when we were backstage. With a bit of luck, we're past that now. That's what Steve promised me anyway. So I'm going to try and share my screen and do my presentation first. We're doing Pecha Kucha presentations. So we've each got 20 slides, which will automatically move on after 20 seconds. The possibility for me having a bit of a car crash during this is pretty high. Smile along with me. That would be fantastic. Hoping for a few laughs, and I'm going to take you through a few case studies. So let me try and share my screen, which we're going to do here. And then as soon as we get in here, I want to start the choose the app. Okay. What we're doing. Can people see a PowerPoint? Yeah. Okay. So I'm starting so here we go. We're on the 20 seconds. I'm going to be talking about how to make boring stuff sexy. So what we're doing here is turning Ford Cortinas hopefully into Ferraris, and that's really the job of a comms professional if we boil it down to this. But let me just clarify, it's not necessarily always boring stuff. What I want to do here is tackle a few maybe awkward subjects, sensitive subjects, but also just a few things that everyone is going to relate to. And of course, all of my examples are going to relate to the housing sector. Some beautiful houses here in Wellington in Shropshire. Some of the new houses here recently finished, including some passive houses. But houses are important, but it's the people that live in them that are most important. People. Every audience is made up of people, and that's really what we want to get into. See something, say something is my first example. This is a safeguarding campaign that we've just launched at the Wrekin Housing Group. This is just it's an internal campaign to encourage staff just if they see something that doesn't feel quite right, they need to report it. So what did we do? We wanted to be, we can do all the traditional stuff, but we've had a really talented young woman on placement with us on the Kickstart scheme, and she hand drew this animation for us. Obviously, you've got to listen to me, and there's only 6 minutes, so we can't put the sound on there, but it really fantastic with a homegrown voiceover as well, backed up with some traditional things, just little things, a keyring there. If you're a trade driving a van, they're going to have those, and it's just there as a little prompt, a little nudge. That didn't seem quite right when I was just in their house. A massive issue in the housing sector at the moment is fire safety, and you'll see a little clip from from citizens from one of Steve's campaigns that they've done. A really sensitive issue. This is not something we can use a whole load of humor or anything like that, because bad things happen in fires. It really and it bleeds into the whole building safety agenda as well. I really like the animation. That you do need the noise again, and I'm sure Steve will be able to share this after. We both will. But all of that stems from the Grenfell tragedy, and you know, I think that while we're here and this is a fast-paced organization, I'll shut up for a few seconds to just reflect on that. So I want to talk about official documents. We're talking annual reports. These are things that actually lots of people have been publishing them this week. Ours went on the website yesterday. What I really wanted to try and get across was moving these from staid, tired, text-heavy documents as if by magic, and try and turn them into much more engaging. In housing, we're really being pushed to make information accessible, relevant, informative, and these old-style documents simply do not do that. So what we've been doing at Wrekin is certainly bringing in a lot more color. Yep, there's a lot of information to get across, but it's drawing out key statistics and doing all of the things that so many people watching this will be fully on board with. So this is a document that's really evolved over the last couple of years. Another internal campaign that we're running at the moment. Lots of you will have access, doesn't matter if you're housing sector or anywhere in your organization, an HR system that you log in, you check your kind of book your annual leave, and you do all of those things, and we're rolling that out at the moment. So we've introduced Paul's Smilometer, and this is information that this is hot off the press. No one internally has actually seen this yet. Paul's our head of HR, so he's kind of leading the rollout of this project, and we're going to be sharing every week Paul's reaction to where we are, using a bit of humor before we get to the point by saying, if you haven't logged in and you haven't checked your personal details, you might not get paid. So we're using a bit of humor before we hit people with a stick later on. Hopefully we won't have to get that big a stick, but we reserve that right anyway. So I wanted to just round off with a last example, talk a bit about recruitment, a really hot topic right now. We see labour shortages across lots of sectors at the moment, and we've been thinking about this actually quite a lot during the COVID period, but we kind of feel like we're in a bit of a pinch point at the moment. I think it's really important to bring in real people. So Simone is an apprentice with us. She has been on a team building actually some of the houses from one of the slides earlier. She was involved in building, and just bringing in bits of movement, and you know, keeping on brand and keeping the text quite light, just to provoke that action to kind of click through and find out a bit more later. So just to kind of summarize everything, I think there's 3 key things. Introducing bits of movement, I think, is really important. Introducing color and making things vibrant is really important. and then also trying to put a smile on people's face is really important. So I've got one slide left, which I put in, and finally, which was for me to try and cover the stuff that I'd forgotten during the other 19 slides. I think I did relatively well. It was slightly chaotic, but that's kind of me. So there we go, 5 examples: safeguarding, fire safety, annual reports, the smiler meter, and recruitment, and that's me done. So who is up next? I think up next is Jayne.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. So Jayne will introduce herself properly, but what I will just say is, if there's any comments, questions and things, put them in the Q&A, put them in the chat, and then we'll draw that into a conversation that we're going to have after Jayne is going to present next, and then Steve. So keep the comments coming in, and over to you, Jayne, and let's show her some appreciation and love with lots of emojis right now.
Thank you. Thanks, Ed. I thought you did really well there. No pressure at all now. Right, okay. Please be nice, guys. This is my first Petcha Kucha, and also my first commsHERO, Broken commsHERO. So I'm really thrilled to be here. So first of all, now I'm going to try and share my screen. Let's see if I can do this one first. Okay. Hopefully you're all seeing that. Click. Okay. Right, my 20 seconds is starting. So I'm Jayne, and I'm Head of Marketing and Communications at Link Cymru Housing Association. And I'm going to talk to you about staff engagement during the pandemonium that was 2020. I'm going to talk to you about a campaign that we ran. So first off, as we all know, the last 18 months have presented challenges like no other. From a comms perspective, we were thrust into a scenario of ever-changing guidance that needed priority communication to our staff, especially our key workers in their care homes. That was a challenge in itself, as I'm sure you're all familiar with how often guidance changed. So alongside dealing with crisis comms, change communications, and making sure we kept everyone up to date, we also needed to raise money for a charity. But raising money for a charity in the middle of a pandemic, when everyone's focus is on washing their hands to the tune of happy birthday, wasn't the easiest thing. So feeling amongst staff was that of anxiety and sadness. People were being moved into roles that they'd never done before. We knew that we had to give our staff a boost as we had a long road in front of us. We wanted to boost staff morale, create a team spirit, but also raise money for our charity, CF Warriors. At the time, there was a huge focus on staying home and only venturing out for exercise. The rules in Wales were to stay local, stay within a 5-mile radius, and nobody should be using their cars unless it was essential. Exercise had to start and finish at their home. People were out walking. I covered more of my local area than I ever had before. Anyway, we used exercise to our advantage. We took a common theme and we ran with it. Pardon the pun. From this, the 870 challenge started. And the challenge was to travel the distance of the Welsh coastal path, a full 870 miles. And we wanted to raise a minimum of £870. But staff were remote. They were dealing with the battle of work, life and home balance, battling challenges of homeschools. I mean, how many of you have to give the deaths there over the top of your screen as if to say, don't interrupt me, I'm in a meeting? We've all been there. So knowing all of these challenges, we made sure that this campaign was inclusive of all. We included the whole family. People were asked to bike, skip, hop, roller skate, or even trampoline to contribute their miles. Once they completed whatever distance they could, they had to nominate another member of staff, tag themselves in on our Yammer group, and also share a picture. and the involvement really was overwhelming. We had colleagues from all over the business contributing, from domestics to board members. They all got involved. People really pushed themselves. Some of them were even looking at it as a bit of a personal challenge, and we definitely found that our board members were incredibly competitive. We created the engagement through fun and excitement in our campaign. Our tone was light and our branding was bright. It wasn't just for our pro athletes, and no distance was too small. We were in this together. We used hashtags that created a community and a recognisable team link spirit across all of our platforms. We also kept a digital map and plenty of fun and eye-catching GIFs to share our progress along the way. All of our branding definitely stood out in both digital and on print formats. I'll give myself a second there to breathe. So then we also used emotions as well, because we got this engagement great from the off, but we had to maintain the momentum while we covered the miles. Humour and camaraderie got the campaign going, but it was emotion and a shared goal that maintained that engagement. So to do this, to keep people motivated, we contacted CF Warriors and we asked for their help. They sent us an absolute star called Lucy. She helped to show us her incredible spirit. Cystic fibrosis means that people affected have to stay away from each other, from other people that have it. So in effect, they're isolating themselves, and having that shared connection helped our staff connect further with the charity as we were all going through this. We shared pictures and stories of what the money would do for the users of the charity. Was it because we were surrounded by news stories of illness and suffering that this worked so well? Was it that human want to help, or was it a combination of all of this, coupled with clever tactics, the use of common themes, the experiences of isolation that we all shared? Either way, we did it. We absolutely smashed our target. People wanted to keep giving and keep moving, so they did. And the campaign just kept on going. And in total, we managed to raise a staggering £5,000, which was a lot larger than our initial £870 target. In a wellbeing survey, 87% of our staff voted the campaign as having helped them with their mental wellbeing and being connected to their colleagues in a time when we were all kept away. Sharing their miles led to conversations opening up about people's well-being, and it really helped. The conversations just started flowing a lot more naturally. What could have easily been lost during the pandemic was the engagement with our colleagues. We have now fostered a culture whereby we have learned to maintain that spirit in a remote world. You just need a common goal, clear objectives of what you're trying to achieve, constant motivation to get there, plus a little sprinkling of fun. We have since started up the Link Strava group, where people all log and contribute their miles through running, walking, cycling and swimming. This not only fits in with our wellbeing strategy, but maintains connection with our colleagues. It's fun, but it can also sometimes get a little bit competitive, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. What I found incredibly interesting about this campaign was how we used the digital to record, share and promote the campaign, and the juxtapositioning of that with the physical element of the actual activity. But it actually worked really well. And as I said, it helped to connect colleagues that had suddenly become remote. Since this event, we have seen more and more of this with businesses having adopted similar approaches for fundraising. You'll recognise some there, and even now the world famous London Marathon has been virtual, making it more accessible to a lot of people. I did it. It was the worst thing I've ever done in my life, but still. What started out as us wanting to raise money for our charity turned into so much more than just financial gain. Our team link spirit grew, our well-being improved, and most importantly, we've created lasting cultural change. And that is it from me. I think I survived that, thankfully. As Ed said, if you've got any, I can see the emojis now. I couldn't see them before. Thank you. If anyone has got any questions, then pop them in the chat and we will cover them at the end. But I'm going to pass over now to Steve.
Thanks, Jayne. I think you did more than get through that. I think you did amazingly there. That was really interesting. Really great project, actually.
Thank you.
Great example of, I think, how the pandemic sort of made us think differently about things as well. Really good segue into my own presentation as well. because I'm talking on a similar theme today, which is really about how to engage colleagues, but specifically how to engage colleagues that tend to be further away from the center, if you like, of your organization. So typically we're talking there about remote colleagues who perhaps work out on the front line. Lots of examples of that in housing. So I'm going to share my screen, and let's hope that I don't let the side down now. Let's see if this works. Can you see my presentation? You can. Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to start from the beginning then. That's always a good place to start, isn't it? And as I said, really, I'm going to talk to you today about reaching out and specifically about keeping our remote colleagues informed, engaged and inspired, which I think is a really hugely important thing for any organization to do. And what's the challenge here? Well, the challenge really is about colleagues who are out in the field, if you like, and have a very different experience of communication for various reasons. There's generally less touch points, less opportunity for them to engage. It's just harder in every regard, really, for these colleagues to keep in the loop and stay informed, engaged, and part of the bigger picture. Why it matters? Well, it matters hugely because these colleagues in these teams are often the ones who are on the front line in daily contact with our customers, particularly in housing as an example, but in many other organizations. So it's more important, if anything, that they are informed and engaged, because how those colleagues feel and how well they're informed will be projected onto the service that they provide to customers. But who do we mean? And I'm going to talk about an example from Citizen here. For us, this is a 350 strong in-house repairs team that we've got. It's our neighbourhood officers, our care teams. But think about who this could be for you. Even if your organisation is purely office-based, there will be people who it's harder to reach because of the nature of their job. A really important thing to think about who they are. And then it's about working with those colleagues. As communications professionals, we do have to trust our instincts, but ultimately we can't assume what the issues are. You have to hear about them firsthand. And the way to do that is to consult. Do it through workshops, do it through surveys, get to grips with what the challenges are before you start talking about a solution, and go into that process with an open mind and open ears as well. Understanding what the barriers are. The fact is, most colleagues in any organization want to feel engaged and motivated about their work. So if that's not happening, it's about getting to grips with what it is that's preventing that from happening. And clear and open communication here is absolutely key. And going into it with an open mind and not thinking it's that people simply don't want to access communication that you're putting out in your organization. Time, of course, is a massive barrier. So if we think about Courtney here is one of our repairs guys, what does his typical day look like? Very, very different to mine, for example, or anybody else who might be office-based. He'll be in customers' homes from 9 to 5, which means that time is critical for him. He just can't access information in the same way as somebody in an office who can load up a computer and do it can. Technology is often another barrier for these sorts of colleagues who rely on smaller, harder to read and use devices. Sometimes those devices will have limited functionality compared to a desktop or laptop computer. And it's about understanding, excuse me, the unique experience of using that technology is a really important thing. And then it's also, and this is really important, about content. Can these colleagues see people in their teams in your communication? Can they relate to the work that you're putting out? And if you don't have that, there's often a vicious cycle that can result here, which is that lack of engagement results in no content coming forward, which in turn results in further disengagement. So here's how we approach this. Well, we did run some surveys and in-person demos and workshops with members of our teams to identify the nature of the barriers that they were facing. And we developed a plan to tackle them. Sorry, I've got a cold, so I'm going to... This is where 20-second slides are not great. So, and then it was about overcoming those barriers. So time barriers being one. That's about smaller, bite-sized, digestible features and bulletins, creating time where it's possible to do so, recognizing for repairs guys, for example, that early morning or early afternoon might be better for them. Going bespoke if you need to with your channels to achieve that. Technological barriers. Well, for us, this was about launching an app version of the intranet that we had, which has been hugely successful, transformed the experience straight away for our colleagues out in the field. It has also been about upgrading that technology where we've needed to do that and make business cases for doing so. and understanding the unique pitfalls, simple things like clicking through from emails to systems. Does it work? Check it works. And speaking to people will help you establish that. And then in terms of content, we've really gone a long way to make teams present, to go to them and tell their story, using interactivity to get them involved and incentivizing them to visit platforms. And notice something about this presentation: pictures and videos of people are so important. Investing in good photography in particular is something that every organization should do. Here's an example: Citizen of the Month. Anyone can nominate a colleague, shortlisted to 5, staff vote on the winner. And this has been one of the best pieces of content, very simple thing to do, to celebrate some of the teams that we're talking about here, who previously were just not very visible in the organization. Citizen of the Month has been a fantastic thing for us. This is a mental health webinar we held, excuse me, on International Men's Day, around mental health. And we ran this at 8 a.m. so that the repairs team, a male-dominated team, could join before their day began. And we used video because it's a more interactive, accessible way for these colleagues to access content. And then here's a feature called From the Front Line. Anyone in housing will recognize this from Inside Housing. I unashamedly stole this. And I would say, do a version of this in your organization. This is a great way of telling the story about your colleagues, helping other colleagues to understand what they do, and crucially showcasing these colleagues who work in frontline roles, which creates healthy competition and momentum. You're never finished. And that's a really important thing. We recognize we're never finished. You have to think about this audience as you would, for example, a harder to reach customer group. You have to put the hard yards in to keep reaching them. We hosted another workshop just this week to bring us up to speed on the challenges that groups of staff face so that we can continue to tackle those. And this is really important. This matters. This isn't a nice to have. Engaging our colleagues, as Jayne just said, really, particularly over the last year, is a hugely important thing, especially those on the front line, in terms of providing a great service and ultimately meeting our strategic objectives. So you have to invest time and resource in this. Every organization has to do this well to provide good services. And reaching harder to reach colleagues is the biggest challenge, but ultimately the biggest reward, because disengaged colleagues will negatively impact your business. Engaging with them takes time and effort, but you will feel the difference when it starts to work. And over the last couple of years, we have really felt the difference in doing this. And a final slide from me, which I always think this is George Bernard Shaw quote, really relevant for this, but any communication. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. And we see this a lot in every organization where we sent the email out, we put it on our intranet, it's not good enough. We've got to do better to make sure that every group of colleagues in our organization, we're doing everything we can to help them access that information. So that's it from me. I realized I shortchanged myself out of one slide with a kind of finishing slide there at the end, but hey ho, it saved a bit of time. So I'll come back to you now, Ed.
So brilliant stuff. Thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks a lot, Jayne. Between us, we've taken on Petra Kutcher in of 3 slightly different ways. I decided, both of you have decided to really look at one project, one kind of approach, or different aspects of making up a whole project, and I think delivered great insight for the audience. And then I just decided to scratch the surface 5 times and just get as much in as I could in a slightly different way, and with a bit of luck, people took a little bit away from that as well. Loads of comments have been coming in. I can't remember exactly when it was, but Helen Reynolds was hammering the emojis. So thanks, Helen. Sarah, keep the tone light and the branding bright. She liked that, so thanks a lot for that. I will. There are some questions in the Q&A as well, so we'll get into those. But Steve, obviously you're talking about hard to reach internal audience. Can can you basically apply exactly the same thing to hard to reach external audiences? Obviously in housing, we talk about quite a lot about kind of a digital divide and things like that. So would you just use the same principles, or would they be different tactics in how you reach a hard to reach external audience?
I think I would fundamentally use the same principles. I mean, of course, the context may be different, but if you think about what we were talking about there, it was about discovering what those challenges are and not making assumptions. Yes, I would absolutely do that. Working with that group as best as you can. Obviously, often easier to do that with small pockets of staff than it is with customers, but nonetheless worth doing, to properly understand what the challenges are. And then you come around to the solutions. And I think the principles around how you engage people, short, sharp things, engaging things, going to them, that's the key bit. I really always balk when I hear people go, well, they're just not reading it. And you go, well, what's it? Is it a 1,200 word article? Because then that's why, and it's our job really as comms professionals to do everything we can. And yes, at the end of that, there will be some people who just prefer to go into work and not really engage with stuff, do their job and go home. But if we've done all we can, actually the vast majority of people want a bit more than that. But yes, I think the answer to your question in short is, I think those principles are for any audience. And I think it's important that we apply the same rigor to internal audiences, because sometimes I don't think that happens. And it's just
I'd agree with that.
It's arguably more important to have an engaged, informed workforce. It obviously is super important to have engaged customers, but ultimately your service will always suffer if you have people in your organization who don't really buy into the bigger picture or understand what's going on.
Brilliant. And Jayne, I mean, it was just brilliant to hear around. I mean, what I really got from it was, even though everyone had to kind of be doing all their activities kind of on their own, is that it actually generated a real sense of I'd say community and definitely team spirit, which I guess was part of the reason for doing it, other than and raising some money for charity. Now you did you have mentioned roller skates maybe in the conversations we had. But believe it or not, everyone, we prepared for this. So talk to us more about the roller skates and how was the risk assessment process?
Health and safety were way too busy with other issues of the pandemic, so we slided in on the roller skates. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was that we started off and we said, we've got to cover the coastal path, and the instant thing is people are walking, running. But then there are people out there that are not interested in that. You've got, your toddlers on your scooters, or you've got your rollerbladers or whatever. So we said, well, actually, we started calculating, well, if we did 10 minutes of dancing in the kitchen, that would equate to, I don't know, I can't remember how many miles it was, but we kind of worked out all of these different things so that we could offer a whole range of different things. And we've got one or two members of staff who are very into their roller skating. One's in a roller derby, and so it was an excuse. We thought, well, you're not doing that at the moment, so get your skates on and get out and cover some miles. So it's like anything. You've got, it's something, Steve, you said then about getting to know your staff and getting to know the things that they're going to engage with. So, and you've just got to tap into those. So it was hobbies, and we, targeted the keen runners. Of course we did, because we knew they'd cover extra miles. But yeah, anything that we could tap into. And like you say, the team spirit, it was huge, because everyone had suddenly gone from working together to being remote, not seeing everyone, and people who were living alone or just weren't speaking to many people in the organisation because they didn't necessarily interact with them in their day-to-day, but would have seen them in the canteen. And so it was a great way to start those conversations online and kind of get that back up. So yeah, there were roller skates involved, and trampolines, and kitchen dancing aplenty.
Fantastic. We had launched by one of our colleagues in IT. He worked out a marathon length route around some of our area offices, and there were, I think there were two people did the whole lot in one go, but then other people were encouraged they could just do one leg, and some people were just like, do it, just go for a walk the dog. You had some teams getting together to do sections, which was good. But I think there was definitely that drive, that kind of healthy lifestyle, physical exercise thing that was fantastic.
I definitely think we've done a lot more exercise in the past sort of 18 months than has been done before, because it was the only thing there, the only option.
Yeah. So let's get into some of the questions that have come in from the audience. I'm going to start with Baz from Red Kite Community Housing. It's a question for all of us. Can I steal your superb ideas? Are there any copyright issues? I'm pretty sure we can come to some royalty arrangement. But no, actually, I think everything here is up for grabs. I think it's commsHERO, that kind of community where we're here to kind of share and share alike. There is absolutely something to be learned in every single session throughout the whole week, which is why I've been to quite a few already, and I will be watching a few back on demand and banking my CPD points. So Ed, with regards to annual reports, do you think the next step will be to ditch the PDF and go completely online? Do you know what, when I was supposed to put in a line or a sentence around this and kind of just acknowledge this in the presentation, I think there's definitely, and a lot of housing providers are already doing kind of video versions and bits and pieces like that. So there's some real creativity going on around how annual reports can be presented. I think that there is that kind of comfort blanket, particularly with some executive teams, that they want like a thing that they can like say, yeah, we've published it. And even if that's a PDF, if it's just a web page or something a little, that they wouldn't necessarily be able to touch and feel. But ultimately, I think it's just about getting the information across in the right way and doing that as creatively as possible. Steve, Jayne, have you got anything you'd want to
all I would say
around
to that is, because I think it's a really good point. I mean, we launched ours a couple of weeks back, and we did it in a flipbook, which I love. Flipbook software. It's really simple to use, and it allows you to embed videos and things like that. But I think what we have to be careful of is accessibility, actually.
Yeah.
So what we discovered was we've got browse aloud on our website, for example. Now, if we put a PDF on our website, the browse aloud tool, which is a fantastic tool, it's like a translation read aloud tool. So it covers off a lot of kind of needs. It worked with a PDF, but it doesn't work with Flipbook. So actually, our response to that was, well, okay, what I'm going to do then is where we've got the annual report section, I'll put the Flipbook as the main option, but I'll put underneath, need to use browse aloud with this. Here's the PDF version.
Yeah.
So I love online stuff, and I think it's the more engaging it can be presented, the better. But you do have to kind of take a moment sometimes and go, all right, are we creating another issue potentially here? So yeah, being careful with that is important, I think.
Cool. So a question for Steve: what has been the most successful way you have engaged with your repairs colleagues?
I think it is that combination of things, really. I mean, that first obstacle, the technological one, was the biggest one, because in the end, if you can't get information out to people effectively and give them the same experience or as close to the same experiences as possible. So the rollout of the app, somebody else has asked about the platform, so I can answer that one in the same question, is the Engage platform, which is provided by Source. And when they launched that app and we were able to roll that out, that was a big moment, because actually the experience on a phone is kind of basically identical to on a desktop, just on a smaller screen. So that was the number one thing. And then it really has been about that content piece. And I'd say Citizen of the Month has been a really great example of bringing out of the woodwork some stories that you wouldn't otherwise hear, and and making it so it's completely unmoderated. You smashed it, so anyone can go on there. And we've had people that, we had a year's worth of Citizen of the Month at our last Excellence Awards. So we did our Citizen of the Year. some of the stories, I mean, people have like saved people's lives, and it's like, I may not have heard about that had we not launched that. And by its nature, you end up with frontline teams coming forward for that, because with the best will in the world in comms or in HR, we're probably not going to be able to make that kind of sort of obvious contribution. So yeah, things like that have made a massive difference.
And then a last question, another one for Steve. Has the pandemic persuaded hard to reach colleagues to engage where before they were reluctant?
Well, I would flip that on its head a little bit and say, I sometimes shudder to think where we would be if we hadn't done the work we had before the pandemic. So a lot of this had been done before, and what the pandemic allowed us to do was kind of come up with new and sort of interesting and think more about how we were going to keep those colleagues engaged. I would have really worried about if we were starting from a standing start with that. So I don't think the pandemic has persuaded people. I think it was the work we were already doing, but we've certainly had to look at ways that we could strengthen that. Because I think, you know, again, this was the point of Jayne's presentation, is the risk of people feeling further away from the organisation than ever, I think, has been probably higher than it's ever been over the last year, and will continue to be a thing that we have to work on.
Definitely.
Cool. So Lee's come to
yes, I have.
Rein us in.
Yeah, very, very, very good session. I think you can tell by the comments of what everyone's been saying throughout, that it's been great content throughout, lots of learnings to be made. I'll just show a couple of them on the stage here for you. So yeah, thanks so much for speaking this week at commsHERO. Jayne, you absolutely smashed your first one, so congratulations for that.
Thank you.
If we can all just get some emoji love going up for the guys and Jayne here, that'd be great. So I'm aware we're running a little bit over, so very quick wrap up from me on my side. Just letting you know again that the commsHERO after party is this evening. It's from 8 till 10 and is available on AirMeet. So we'll post the link out for you all to join on there shortly. Again, we've still got the competitions running, so take photos of yourselves or your pets watching commsHERO, hashtag commsHERO on any of your social channels, and we'll pick that up and we'll be announcing the winners tomorrow morning. We've also got some prizes that we're giving away at the after party this evening, along with them Krispy Kreme vouchers, which would be great, great to receive. I've also just picked up on Kate's comment about Steve, your desk buddy placed in the background there.
So on brand. I'm so on brand. I mean,
I won't ask what happened at Desk Fest for that desk buddy there, but yeah.
I'm glad someone spotted it. Otherwise, that would have just been a bit awkward, really.
Again, just big thank you to our sponsors, Staffbase, Prezi, React and Share, Red Kite, and First Up for making this week possible. We'll be back at 5:15, so 10 minutes time, with the legendary Helen Reynolds on why serious organizations need to use humor in their comms. So really looking forward to that. I'm sure the guys here will be sticking around on a table for the next 10 minutes. So if you do have any further questions to ask them. But once again, thanks so much. Great to have you here. And we'll see you all shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.